Okay, so Paul maybe jinxed me and I won't be confirmed in a couple hours. No problem. Knocking on wood. Everybody knock on wood or something like that. So I feel a little bit of a competition because Dave introduced Paul as the most optimistic, and I'm gonna have a little throwdown there because I think I'm the most optimistic in the state about where we are and what's happening. So good morning, everybody. As Paul was talking, it reminded me that when we do business attraction at WEDC, when we go and talk to businesses about locating or expanding in Wisconsin, or even when we go to, sorry, I have a little bit of a cold, so I'm gonna breathe and talk slower. When we go to other countries and describe what it's like in Wisconsin, one of the little factoids we use is that the average commute is 19 minutes. And it's something that we really get used to here in Wisconsin, that, you know, getting to work is relatively easy compared to Chicago or New York or Mexico City. But it's really something that we use to kind of describe the ease of doing business in Wisconsin, that it is an attractive place to do business. And so it's really important, I think, to recognize that we're using this key piece of a transportation factoid to really describe quality of life in Wisconsin and what it is like to do business in Wisconsin. So it was just a reminder of that. And then the last thing I'll say about Paul's comments is he mentioned Wisconsin nice and Midwest nice, and that we're not, you know, expressive enough about who Wisconsin is and what we have to offer. Well, I'll just say I was raised right outside of New York City, so I'm pleased to bring New York City nice to how we're selling Wisconsin. And, you know, I'm so proud to be in this position, and I've hopefully getting confirmed today, but on Thursday is my second anniversary in this role. And before the pandemic, BP, or before COVID, whatever, I had the opportunity to travel around the state and really dive in. Coming from Organic Valley, I'd been really focused on agriculture, working with the farmers, and so I wanted to learn all about what was happening in the rest of Wisconsin when it comes to the business community and industry. And what I really heard from everyone was the workforce challenge that we were facing. So remember, before the pandemic hit, we still had just above 3% in unemployment. We were doing well, the economy was screaming, and we were wondering, you know, we need more workers, we need more workers. I heard that all around the state, whether in rural Wisconsin or here in the more urban areas. And it was really a conversation about trying to identify, what can we do to solve this? What's really causing the challenges? Is it just plain old demographics? Is it we have an aging population and we need to attract more people? Is it obstacles that are keeping people from work? Obstacles like a lack of childcare or previous incarceration. What can we do to bring people off the sidelines? That was the conversation. And then the pandemic hits, and everything kind of got turned upside down. And I remember thinking, like, one of my thoughts was, well, maybe this will help us with our workforce challenge, because we'll have this opportunity to shift and to move and to change, as Paul talked about. And I think we still have those opportunities, but we've really seen in the bright light of day what it is that keeps people from fully participating in the economy. And it's things like a lack of childcare. It's things like unsecure housing, or food insecurity, or a lack of transportation. These are the things that we really could understand all of a sudden, because you're on a Zoom call and you see this colleague of yours, you know, with a 4-year-old running around. And you're like, okay, well, if you don't have childcare, you really can't fully participate in the economy. Or you understood that once that bus route stopped working out to Mequon, and the restaurateur wasn't able to get their people on that last mile, you understood that transportation was keeping people from really participating in these obstacles. And so at WEDC, what we've done is we've really tried to break down and understand, what are the things that we need to be thinking about? What are the things that we need to be investing in as a state in order to make sure we have that ability for folks to fully participate in the economy? So when you look back at, say, the recession of 2008, 2009, the drive there was, okay, we need jobs. And that was full force, let's get jobs, we need to get Wisconsinites back to work. And with the pandemic, we're seeing a different type of kind of portfolio hit. We're seeing the things that are really challenging us from being able to participate in the economy come to the forefront. So at WEDC, we're thinking about things like this infrastructure question that you all are challenging yourselves with. Things like transportation, broadband, housing. How do we make sure that the community infrastructure is there to be able to support people? We're also, pointing out that without a strong public health care system, we had a hit to the portfolio because we saw that folks who had more compromised systems, who didn't have access to consistent preventative health care, were more vulnerable to the virus. And we know, just as a fact that they're more vulnerable in general. And so thinking about how does healthcare play into somebody's ability to fully participate in the economy. We also look, of course, at education. Paul mentioned the fantastic education system that we have in Wisconsin. Well, all of a sudden you have this opportunity where you have unskilled workers who are maybe working in hotels or restaurants who have the opportunity to move to more skilled positions in manufacturing or something like that. How do we get those people with those skills? How do we provide them with the opportunities? How do they get to technical colleges? How do they pay for technical colleges? How can we work with the employers to make that happen? So thinking about the role of education and making sure that we always have the opportunity for education for Wisconsinites to be able to participate and be able to upskill and do things like that. And then finally, the environment. And we saw that for many of us in Wisconsin, the pandemic offered an opportunity to really indulge and enjoy our outdoor environment and how important that is. But for many Wisconsinites, there's still the challenge of having the opportunity to have a safe environment, whether it's clean water or clean air. And again, how critical that is, that if you don't have access to those things, it's hard to fully participate in the economy. So as we think about how do we recover, what does recovery look like? And I'll pause just for a moment to remind everybody that recovery is dependent on vaccines, and please do everything you can to encourage everybody to get vaccinated as the boosters come out, get boosters and do all that work. I have been arm in arm throughout this with public health and wanting to put public health aside and say, okay, we're on full bore recovery now, but it's my understanding today that the Federal Reserve is going to come out and say that the Delta variant is continuing to hold back our recovery. So from my position as the head of WEDC, I just want to move on to recovery. So I'll get off my soapbox about that, but help me, please. But as we move towards recovery and we think about what is it that we need to focus on, what do we need to invest in, we need to learn these lessons from the pandemic, and we need to be thinking about things like what you all are thinking about when it comes to transportation and infrastructure. We need to continue investing in broadband and in education and in healthcare. These are the things that are going to get people back to work, remove those obstacles to get the workers that we have here in Wisconsin to be able to come back to work, but it's also going to be able to help attract anyone, the folks from Chicago, the folks from Minnesota. If they want to come here, they're going to be looking for things like a quality of life that includes, will we have good childcare? Will we have affordable, accessible, quality childcare? Will we have the ability to help take care of my parents, our seniors? And all these things that need to happen. So we have to be thinking about these things not only from a perspective of getting Wisconsinites back to work, but also attraction. We can walk and talk at the same time. We can do these things. We can invest in ourselves and attract people at the same time. So we're really thrilled at WEDC to be able to help with this by helping you all do this planning with a $31,700 grant to RTLC to help with the planning. This is really important because this is about local solutions. This is about thinking about what will work here in Waukesha County in the M7 region and making sure that those solutions come from inside and from the local level. This is also indicative of what we're doing at WEDC, which is what we're calling the Workforce Innovation Grants. This is $100 million that Governor Evers has dedicated towards solving the workforce challenges that we have in Wisconsin. These are grants that are available through the American Rescue Plan Act They are grants that are up to $10 million. So what we're doing is we're asking regions, communities, localities to come together and to propose to us a solution for a particular workforce challenge that they're seeing in their area. So one area, Southwest Wisconsin, where I live, I think is thinking about childcare because there's a real childcare challenge there. I think that there's some conversations happening here about childcare, but also about transportation. So what are these priorities that need to be, faced, and how can we do it with a real investment of dollars? Often we have ideas, we have plans that come out of, like the work that you're doing here at RTLC, and then there's no resources for that. So what we're doing is really putting the resources forward and saying, okay, here are the resources, regions, locals, what will you do with that? Because, all the ideas can't come from Madison, they can't come from state government. These are things that are really localized and real challenges that we're facing there. So I think that's a real indication of the challenges that we're facing and the opportunity that we have in order to shift that with the governor's investment in the workforce innovation grants. I'm really excited to see that happen. If any of you have interest in that or want to know more about it, WEDC.org has more information about that. The applications are open right now. We're going to do 2 rounds of these grants. We'll do the applications ending on October 25th, and then we will have a second round of applications in the spring after we've learned, what are we doing well, what aren't we doing well when it comes to these grants. So I really encourage you all, especially as you're thinking about transportation, to take a look at those and think about how that might be something that you could apply for with WEDC either right away or in the springtime. So with that, I'm glad to take any questions that you might have. I'm glad to take bets on whether or not I get confirmed in an hour. Yeah, you'll take that bet, okay. But I just really appreciate the chance to talk with you today, to share my enthusiasm, Governor Evers' enthusiasm for the future of Wisconsin, for our economy. And, I love to be able to come and visit and see the red-hot economic development that's happening here in the area. So thank you so much. Yeah, I'll take if anybody has a question or a comment or a bet. Here's one over here.
Great.
The name of the grants again?
The name of the grants is the Workforce Innovation Grants, and it's at WEDC.org. You can find information. While you're thinking of a question, I'll also tell you about the Main Street Bounce Back grants that we're doing. So this is really tugs at my heart, and I love these grants. So we have $50 million dedicated towards vacant areas, vacant spots that you might see on a main street or on a commercial corridor. And if a new business goes into those spaces, we have $10,000 available to help assist them with inventory, with payroll, with rent, whatever it is that business owner decides. So these are new businesses that have started between January 1st of 21, so just 9 months ago, through June of 22. And we're just really trying to reward the courage that it takes to open a new business during this time, to start a new retail spot or a cafe. And information about that is also available at WEDC.org. But, think about it, and we've all had at WEDC these moments where we've been able to tell a business owner about that. Mike, who works for me, was getting his hair cut, and his hairstylist was telling him that they're going to go break off and go to a new area. And Mike was like, okay, well, there's this grant available. And she was so excited. And I just told somebody the other day who was opening a new business in Westby, Wisconsin, which is this teeny little town. I'm like, oh, there's a grant for you. So think about who you might know, then you can share that information with.
I just wanted to know, Secretary, when you kind of glanced over when you recruit or look at other areas, when you're selling Wisconsin, what are the top 2 or 3 attributes you really sell that we have?
Always the main thing that I start with is the workforce, because the hard workers that we have in Wisconsin are our best and brightest asset. When I was at Organic Valley, we would always hire the sons and daughters of our owners. So our owners were the farmers, and we always hired the sons and daughters of the farmers because we knew that they understood farming. And they understood what it takes to be a farmer, and they would work hard to make sure the farmers were successful. I think the same thing exists for manufacturing in Wisconsin, where, if you hire a kid from Wisconsin, his uncle was in manufacturing or his family was in manufacturing, he understands or she understands productivity. They understand supply chain. It's like in their blood. And so that's what I talk to the businesses most about. I also talk about, the quality of life and the community that we have here. And, regardless of anything you might read or say, if somebody's neighbor needs something, the Wisconsinite will deliver that.
A follow-up question then is, since you mentioned
You're
workforce.
totally going to duel on optimism here.
Since you followed up workforce, and yes, as two optimistic people, I feel we can resolve it. However, I know strictly by biology, we're not going to birth our way out of it. So the demographics are not in our favor at this point to fulfill many of the jobs we have right now. What are we going to do? And again, we've talked about attraction, retention, not just now of employers, but workforce to this state.
Well, I think it's critical to have the quality of life here that we expect for our own citizens. And so that means if you're going to invite somebody to come to live in Wisconsin, we need to have quality housing. We need to have childcare. We need to have those things that you're going to be thinking about when you're moving here. So when I was a trailing spouse, one of, that workforce term, and when we came and moved to Southwest Wisconsin, I had 3 little ones under the age of 2, I had twins and a newborn, and we needed childcare. I did not want to renovate a house, and there were all these challenges to coming here, and I'm so glad that we did. I'm thrilled that we raised our family here, but we need to make sure that that's something that we can accomplish and use that to attract people.
Hi, Missy. Learning more about economic development recently has been great. I went to a course over in Madison talking about all sorts of economic development items, but for sure our declining population in Wisconsin. So piggybacking off of what Chairman Decker had mentioned, have you considered automation, grants or funding for automation or computerization to help with this?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Judy. It's really interesting, the tools that WEDC has, tax credits and things like that for attraction or expansion, are really based on job creation. And I had a very smart person who was working for me when I started come and say, okay, so we're solving for a problem we don't have. We don't need more jobs. We need more high quality, high paying jobs, but we need more workers. And so as I look at the tools and we, look at that at WEDC, this is the nice thing about being a public-private agency with a little bit more flexibility. We're looking at our tools and saying, how can we use those to incentivize automation, to incentivize a business to make the investment into robotics or whatever that is. And the reason I feel comfortable doing that is after spending 2 years of traveling around and talking to businesses, especially manufacturing businesses, no business has ever said to me, oh, we were able to lay off 5 people, 10 people after doing that. It's no, we brought in this automation, we got more efficient, we got more productive, I trained my workers, I kept all of my workers, and now they're doing higher skilled, safer jobs. And so that's what we need to be incentivizing. That's what we need to be thinking about it. Now, I'll say, as not a politician, nobody likes to be anti-job, right? So I'm absolutely not. We want to create jobs, always. But we want to do that thoughtfully, and we want to make sure that we're creating family-sustaining jobs, and we want to make sure that we're creating safe jobs, and we're, creating more productivity and helping our businesses be more successful.
Thank you. I have a question.
Uh-huh.
I think this is on.
Yeah.
Earlier in your talk, which was, I really appreciate you being here. It's just exciting to have you here and your optimism. You mentioned that when you go out and you sell Wisconsin, you talk about the average commute being 19 minutes. And having been involved in regional discussions about transit for over 15 years, that is something that everybody takes pride in, but it challenges then the mindset of embracing the multimodal needs of the state and the region. Do you have any thoughts on that? Or when you're out talking to business people, are they talking about the connectivity issues? How can we embrace and be proud of the short commute, but also instill the need for all the different pieces in that multimodal jigsaw puzzle?
Well, I think one of the real challenges is that we really only have the short commute with one person sitting in that car to celebrate. We need to do a better job of having more public transportation in Wisconsin that we can then brag about. I just had a very large company come and have discussions, and they said, we want to know what your public transportation is like. We want to know what the rail system is like between Chicago and Milwaukee. These were very pointed questions about, what is that like, because they have employees that are coming from metropolitan areas that are used to having the opportunity to sit down and read the paper or do some work while they're commuting and not have that be wasted time. So it's really important that we need to think broader about that.
Hi, Missy. So we all know that a lot of economic development really happens on a regional basis, and a lot of your work is based on that. What can the WEDC do from a transit standpoint to help break down some of the silos that Paul and you were talking about between municipalities, so that we can get more public transit, public transport, whatever the solutions are, and what is your role and any specific ideas you have on that?
So I think what I would say is in a number of ways around the state, I've seen efforts that are siloed, not just in transportation, but let's say in changing the workforce realities that we're facing. I've seen efforts that are siloed. And that are, my idea is a fantastic idea, and I'm just going to push hard on my idea. And that's one of the reasons why the workforce innovation grants that I referenced are centered around the idea of collaboration. And so in order to apply for one of these grants, you have to demonstrate that you're collaborating with others in your regional area and that you're working with other organizations. And I'm going to want to see that you adjusted yourself, that you didn't just bully your great idea through, that you got input and you were inclusive of other conversations. And I think that that's a skill that we need to keep working on. And that's one of the, I love it. I'm capacity building with my grant application because I'm making people work together. But I think that's really important, and I think that's what at WEDC at the state level we can do, is continue to force collaboration in order to access those resources, because it's really critical that we have folks working together and not, Wisconsinites love to have, I say this as a New Yorker, Wisconsinites love, baling wire and duct tape, and I'm going to fix this problem, and, we're going to move on and make this happen. Well, taking that time to collaborate will result in a more successful idea. So I think that's one of the things we can do at the state level.
Thank you for coming. I'm going to be preaching to the choir, or at least the choir director here. But I look at the statistics and I see that Madison is booming, outstripping anything in the rest of the state. And a lot of that is the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Every dollar we invest there, we get $24 back, is the last number I saw. A similar number we get in investment in UW-Milwaukee, but UW-Milwaukee is starved all the time for resources. We had reference earlier today to the good work that UWM does in supporting all the things that we do in this council, but everything else. Seeing that you're going to get confirmed today and you talk business to people, can you talk to the legislature and get them to realize that the business community and the mayors and the public officials need investment in places like UW-Milwaukee? John Torinas writes about this all the time. Mm-hmm. But Milwaukee is struggling. The city of Milwaukee is struggling. We need investment in education in Milwaukee, and a lot of that at the university level so that we can replicate what Madison is doing right now. So I'd ask you, I'm sure when you talk to business people around the country who want to invest in Wisconsin, one of the first things they ask is transit, but they also ask, what about the education system? Mm-hmm. And we need that investment in Milwaukee. So I would hope you take that message back to the people you talk to who are going to confirm you today.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I will say I sat with a bunch of, I shouldn't say a bunch, I sat with a wonderful group of business leaders a week or two ago, and we had a whole conversation about workforce and the needs of workforce, and especially the needs of engineers. And I asked those CEOs, have you sat down with your legislators and told them about your needs? You know, did you tell them that you need a new engineering building in order to house more engineering students in Wisconsin? And one of the 8 had. So my goal is to not go tell those legislators, but to bring business leaders with me to tell them. Because I always found when I was advocating and working on behalf of Organic Valley, if I brought a farmer with me, the legislators would listen to the farmer. So I'm going to bring business leaders with me and have them be sure to tell legislators about those needs. I mean, I think we really have to make that connection rather than just saying it. We need to bring those business leaders to the table.
Good morning. I'm Callie Berg, Economic Development for the City of Franklin. And to piggyback on the question about the UW system, another strong component of our logistics system is General Mitchell International Airport, and it's a huge competitive advantage here in the Southeast region. Is there any consideration at the high strategic level of investing in the airport so that we're more competitive directly with O'Hare in terms of our ability to attract international business?
A little bit out of my wheelhouse, I will admit. My fellow, hopefully being confirmed today, colleague Craig Thompson would be better positioned to answer that. I will say that, again, in the conversations we've had with companies recently, it is access to the international airports, both of O'Hare and of Mitchell, that are attractive. And so we have to make sure, recognizing that more and more air cargo and things like that are going to be happening through our airports, and again, investing in them and keeping up with that infrastructure. And I think that's something, you know, both UW and the airport, the tech colleges, these are all things that we've already invested in. So why let them go to waste? You know, now we're talking about how do we keep them vibrant, how do we keep them modern, but we've already made those investments. So let's continue to support them. I'm not, you know, talking about big new massive investments and things. It's maintenance. It's making sure that, you know, that those efforts don't go to waste, and that thoughtfulness and the smarts of the people who came before us to make those big investments. We continue that and support that.
Hello, Missy. Urban Bujo. I have a beautiful Wisconsin accent, so we have to make sure that we understand that. Okay, the reason I'm here is I'm an engineer, and I'm going through now a social transformation on my doctorate degree for combining engineering and social justice. And what I would like to understand is, when we build planning for a regional level that we're doing right now, and when we build the infrastructure that we allow people to connect, how we join now the inclusion part and the equity level that have been missing for so long. Because we talk about the silos that exist. The silos can be between municipalities, and silos can be within the municipalities. So those need to be broken down also in a level where the social capital, that the quality of life that you mentioned, can be uplifted to the level where we all have the same quality life that we expect to get. Mm-hmm. This is what I'm going to get into my study to try to see how this can be done.
I love it. You know, when I talked earlier about the different things that WEDC is looking at, whether it's community infrastructure or healthcare or education or the environment. The reason that we're doing that and trying to look at it from an individual perspective, what's an individual's experience in trying to have economic well-being in Wisconsin, is to try to make sure that we're looking at it from all different sides and including all different experiences. My colleague Joaquin Alturo is sitting here, and he helped me really think about economic well-being in terms of you have to look at it from everybody's perspective, and you have to look at it from the perspective of someone who is experiencing real disinvestment and real systematic underinvestment in those pieces of infrastructure that have then left them behind. I can't look at it from the terms of what does financial stability mean to me, Missy Hughes, because I have a completely different perspective of it from someone else. And so when you look at things like each of these pieces, transportation, education, environment, you need to be looking at it from an inclusive perspective. And not only looking at it, you need to be talking to those folks. And you need to be talking to that experience. What's your experience of taking this transportation? What's your experience of not being able to take that transportation? And so I think that's really critical, and I would love to hear more about your work as it comes to fruition.
One more question, if there's one. Great.
Hello, my name is Chloe Kinsey. I'm with the Greater Milwaukee Foundation. And I have a question about, so we're talking about bringing in talent from outside by ensuring housing, childcare, and transportation. But how do we not lose the equitable piece in that for our residents who are currently living here and struggling to get from their jobs or from home to their jobs, getting equitable childcare and fair education? Because it seems like I'm coming from, recently moved here from Detroit. So we're providing all of these resources in Detroit, but they're very much focused on transplants, people who are coming from the suburbs to live in the cities, and we're forgetting that equitable piece. So how do we meet in the middle for that?
Thanks, Chloe. I appreciate that. And I want to be clear, my focus is first on the Wisconsinites that are here and making sure that they have what they need, because the reality is talent attraction is very, very hard on a net basis. Right? You might attract a few people to come and live in this area, but you're probably going to lose a few people to a different area. So it's really focused on who do we have here in Wisconsin right now, and make sure that they have the opportunities that every Wisconsinite has, and make sure that we're looking at that from an equitable standpoint, because the reality is we haven't been doing that for a very long time, and we've got a long way to go before we can even kind of get to parity on that. So I appreciate that question, and I want to be clear that my first thought is on the folks that are already here in the state. All right. Thank you, everybody, very much. Good luck with the rest of your conference.